Hey Jennifer, welcome.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm pretty good. I had a cupcake for breakfast, so I'm starting off with good choices.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I have an empty house finally, right after 2 days of snow days and whatnot. And
Yep.
my kids and my husband are over in Grand Rapids for a big choir and music educator thing. So they won't be back until this evening. So I'm on my own for dinner, and that
Woohoo!
sounds great. I have only me to please for dinner, for once. So that's all good. All good. Um, well, I wanted to just check in with you about a topic that's been popping up in like all the social media spaces, and we've talked about it, which is basically like, how do we find like peace and protect our peace and our sanity during the kind of the wild chaos of the the first week for sure of the Trump administration, but who knows
A
beyond
long
that
weekend.
when all this chaos is going to be ever resolved. It might be 4 years or more. So Jennifer, how are you finding peace? How are you protecting your peace in this time?
Um, honestly, we talked about this, but my philosophy is chill the fuck out.
It's a good philosophy in all the things in life in general. It's
Yes.
good.
Like I remember 2017 and 2018 and like I got all worked up about every little thing and I was hashtag resisting in every way possible on the internet and
Yeah.
just doing all the things um and I think, and we talked about this before, is like, I think part of, for me, is we have found our groups. We have the Women of Michigan Action Network. We've, grown the Midland County Democratic Party, and there's other national groups and podcasts and people that we listen to and books we've read. So, like,
Yeah.
before it was kind of like we're starting from zero. Now we're not starting from zero.
Hmm.
So, chill. We have mechanisms in place,
Yeah.
and and that's, I say that in jest a little bit, the whole chill part, because I get it, people are freaking out for valid reasons, but it's not entirely productive.
Yeah. I agree. I think that it's like in the social media space, kind of, day one, right, of the inauguration, which by the way, I avoided the television all day for
Hmm.
the inauguration, and
I
our
watched
friend
Cold Dark all day.
and our friend Elena and I went to the Midland Community Center, and we met a ton of our Democratic Party friends at the community center,
Uh-huh.
and we were all there, like basically like, I'm out. Like, I don't
Yep.
even want
Yep.
to risk seeing a headline come across my eyeballs. And so
Yeah.
I'm going to go somewhere. And it was super cold that day, super cold that day. So, like, the best place to be for a Democrat in Midland, I guess, if you wanted to get out of the house, was the community center. So we had lots of like quick conversations with folks there. So, but yeah, I mean, I think that uh, it's just like this balance, right? Like, and it's a really hard balance to strike of staying informed and knowing, and so informed enough to know like where you can and should like plug in your
Yeah.
best like resources and best magic, like we always
Mhm.
say. And if you stay totally head in the sand, you're never going to know what that is.
Yeah.
But you have to balance that with like lurching from outrage to outrage to outrage.
Yeah.
Not that we're not outraged, but that
Mhm.
we have to conserve our energy. There's a finite amount of energy that we have. We have to make sure we're doing everything we're doing in really strategic ways. And like you
Mhm.
said, like we know so much more than we did in 2016, right? We know how to do this work. We've found each other. We are so much stronger. So that frenetic, like, oh my gosh, let me sort of freak out constantly is not,
Yeah.
in my opinion, necessary like it was back then.
Yeah. And I gave myself a head in the sand day on the 20th. I didn't want to watch it. Nothing to do with it until Griffin started texting us
I know.
all the EOs that were passed, and I'm like, oh man, Griffin, you stopped me from like,
Me too.
ignoring it for a day, but that's okay. And like, I still get that sinking feeling in my
Oh,
chest
for
every
sure.
time a new thing comes across. It's like, oh my gosh, we are so screwed. Like I have those thoughts, but then I'm like, okay, I can't do anything about this right now.
Mhm.
And destroying my mental health and becoming paralyzed. It's like, okay, so I was thinking about this the other day. We're living in the Barbie movie. And did you see the Barbie movie?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
I watched it numerous times, and my kids got it for me for my birthday. So it's like a classic to me. But like, okay, so during the Harris campaign, we were living in Barbie land, and everything was great. And not that we didn't think Trump could win, we knew that that was a
Yeah.
possibility. But we had hope and we had a belief, and I really did think that Harris was going to win. Squeaking by the skin of her teeth, but I thought she was going to win. So then we're in the Mojo Dojo Casa house because Trump won, and now we're in the phase where and we're going to be in that
Yeah,
Mojo Dojo
yeah,
Casa house for the next 4 years. That's where we live now,
yeah.
everybody. That's our new normal. With the literal worst orange melted Barbie Ken that you could possibly imagine.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
now, like, we're in a space where you can, the two things are happening. There's when Barbie laid down on the ground and couldn't move, and everybody they had to pick her up and carry her off. Some people are in that phase; they're paralyzed, and some people are in the phase where Barbie is crying and saying, "I'm not pretty enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I can't do anything." And so, like, you and me and a whole bunch of other people, we have to be the Glorias who come in and say, "No, Barbie, you are good
Mhm.
enough. We
Yeah.
can do this, and we're going to make a plan, and we're in weird Barbie's house right now, and we're going to make that plan." It's going to take a while to turn all the Barbies back, but we've got work to do.
Wow, what an analogy. That's amazing. I never thought about it that way. But totally. And all of these different roles are super valid too. I
Mhm.
noticed like like right after the election and actually in the last couple of days, there's some of this like invalidating where folks are and
Yeah.
like if you need to like if you're still in that space of like I gotta like post in social media every time Trump or the new administration does something wild, then that's okay. You can be
Mhm.
in that place. My advice to that person is like just be really protective of your peace, right?
Yeah.
And find ways to uh respond and not react every
Mhm.
time. But some of us have to have our head in the sand, and some of us on and on and on, and we have to make sure we're like not invalidating all of those places to be. I think um, I wrote a quick note in our Women of Michigan Action Network private space the other
Mhm.
day,
Yeah, I
maybe
saw it.
yesterday, which is basically like to that effect. Like we have to preserve our peace. We have to not react. We have to respond and all of that. And I did have somebody say like, "Hey, how could you not be angry?" Right? And it's
Mhm.
interesting for that perception, that like characterization of like actually like let's take a beat is can be like assumed to be or interpreted like I'm not angry. I'm super angry. I'm
Oh, I'm
super
pissed.
livid. Yeah, super super livid.
Yeah.
And I am
Because
paying
that's my
attention.
husband. He gets to hear it all.
Yeah, exactly. My husband and I, we just like sit around, shake our heads at dinner all the
Yeah.
time. That's that's our tradition. Um, but anger shows up in lots of different ways,
Mhm.
and like it's okay to give each other permission to not like be screaming on the street corner every
Yeah.
day. And in fact, like I think about the quote from the Hamilton Broadway show. Aaron Burr has a song called Wait for It, and the line is, I'm not standing still, I'm lying in wait.
Mhm.
Um, that's where I feel like I am. Like,
Yeah.
I am like paying attention.
Yep.
I am like as strong as I ever was. You might see it as stillness and interpret that as like weakness or like burnout or I'm giving up, but I'm like I'm paying really close attention to where my skills and abilities will make the biggest impact on our work.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's a little bit like we talked about with the Women's March, that like we anticipated that it would be smaller than it was in 2017. Of course it was.
yeah,
There's no way it wouldn't be. That's not because people are less galvanized to do something. It's because we already have our organizations. We already know what we're going
Yeah.
to do. I didn't feel the need to go to a march. I went to my
Mhm.
son's swim meet because I'm
Right.
like, that's more important to me right now, is being there for my family. Because I know I'm going to fight, I'm going to work, I'm going to organize. We've already got that in the work. So I didn't need a march to validate me for that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. I, I I also think that those of us who've been in this for a very long time, right, are in a place of, danger for burnout, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
um and when you kind of do some reading about like activism and burnout in activism, there's like a high degree of people who burn out as activists, and part of that is because there's no like immediate reward for it, right? There's like,
Yeah.
so one of the ways to kind of, as an HR person, I know, right? One of the ways to get to burnout the fastest is not that you have so much to do. It's not that you have so much to do. It's that you can't imagine that what you're doing might be resolved or might make a
Hmm.
difference. So that's why we are, you and me and others of us who've been kind of leading this locally for so long, we're in high danger of burnout because we're looping back to that place of
Hmm.
like, is this, will I be able to see the fruits of this labor? And
Yeah.
we have to be like aware of that, but also know there's a generation of folks who are not leading the charge last time. It doesn't have to be us. And we
Yeah.
can like learn from each other and together do this work. It doesn't mean we have to like drop it and go away, but
Yeah.
there's a place for everybody
But
in the
we
work
make
for sure.
space, and
Yeah.
that's something that we've always talked about, whether we're talking about minorities or different people that don't always have a voice at the table. You and I have always
Mhm.
talked about trying to make space for people, and that includes making space for new ideas. Like, the Midland County Democratic Party Events Committee met yesterday, and we have two new people, and one of them's in her 20s that are on the events
That's
committee,
awesome.
and like, she's like, oh, I don't want to, I don't want to say anything. We're like, oh no, please come here.
Mhm.
We love you. Say whatever you
Absolutely.
want. We need you. So
Yeah.
yeah, making space for people. And I do want to go back to a second, talking about like posting on Facebook, or posting on social media, being angry, whatever. One piece of advice I would give to people is, fine, if you want to respond to everything Trump says or does, that's okay, because we do need the information out there that not everybody agrees with him. There's a different point of view.
Totally.
You're going to
Yeah.
reach people, whether it's 10 people or 100 or 1,000, whatever, you're going to reach people. So very much that is a beneficial thing to do. If one, you have the facts right, don't react to stuff that people can easily say, yeah, that's not true. And
Yeah.
two, once you do that, or once you like a post or share a post that is about that topic, the algorithms are going to feed it to you over and over and over again. So you're going to get stuck in that one issue.
Hmm.
And if you don't intentionally move past that, like, you don't have to like every single post that talks about that one issue. Like a few of them, move on, find something else. So the algorithm will keep, giving you something new.
Hmm.
Otherwise, we're spinning our wheels in like, everybody keeps calling this a flurry of Trump EOs, and a flurry of all the things Trump's doing. I call it a monkey throwing shit, because that's essentially what he is. He's just a monkey. He's out of the cage. All the monkeys are out of the
Yeah.
cage, and they're just throwing stuff everywhere, and we're all getting hit by it. But you have to clean it off and go find something else to worry about for a little while.
Oh my gosh. Ah, I like that imagery. I love the imagery of the monkey because I actually had that happen to me once.
Oh, did you really? Oh my gosh.
Okay, quick story. So it was a glass thing in front of me. It was a anthropology class in college, and we went to the zoo. And there's this monkey. It was one of those like painted face monkeys. I don't know what
Yeah.
their names are. And I was like standing at the glass, and it came right up to the glass, like to look at me. And it kind of gave me a look, and then it backed up like 7 or 8 steps, and then it reached down and grabbed its own shit and threw it poof, like right in the glass, right at me, like
Oh
right
my
at my face.
gosh.
And my professor said, "Oh yeah, it does that. You have red hair and it doesn't like red hair or something. I don't know. I don't know. Something about me that monkey did not appreciate anyhow."
Oh,
So now I'm gonna start remembering that when I see all of this activity going on. But yeah, it's like that, and it's like a temper tantrum. It's also like stuff's going on that these folks who are doing this are not thinking about like the implications all the way down, or they are and they're not listening to the people who are doing it, or they don't care or whatever. I mean, just like thinking about like the hiring freeze right at the for federal employment, and like how that impacted or potentially could have impacted the the VA system, right?
Mhm.
Literally not putting doctors in VA hospitals to provide health care to veterans. Now, on one side, that might be an effort to privatize the VA so that a group of folks get richer, which is probably part of it. But also, it's probably just negligence, like realizing that, that there's no one looking deeper into like
Mhm.
the actual implications of this
Yeah.
like flurry or monkey shit of activity that's going on, which is pretty scary, right? We have to
Yeah.
wait for the actual impact because it doesn't feel like anyone is caring about that at all.
And it's for sure a question of, and maybe it's both. Who knows? I mean, because it's not just, this is not
Probably
just
all.
one
Yeah.
person coming up with all this stuff. Trump didn't think all this stuff up.
Yeah. Or any
He
of it.
didn't do the work.
Any
He
of
didn't do
it.
any of
Yeah.
the work. He signed his little name.
Yeah.
But like there are for sure people in his administration that are like, twirling their mustaches, let's destroy government so we can privatize everything, which I am firmly against. Not the government always does a great job, but I'm sick
Yeah.
of the rich getting richer and
Right.
the
That's the
billionaires
only
coming
reason
up.
for it. That's the only
Yeah,
reason you'd want to privatize
yeah,
anything. It's not because you believe that it's going to be a better system. Look at the dams here in Midland. Like those are privately owned dams, and that's what happens when you have no
yeah,
government regulation over
yeah.
something that has a potential to impact
Hmm.
entire cities.
And we all
So,
suffered for it. Every
yeah.
last, even if your house did not flood in Midland, you suffered for it.
Oh, for sure. For sure. So, yeah, I totally agree. I think that there's like all sorts of elements there, but the only reason, like, we're going down a rabbit hole about the VA,
Hmm.
but like the only
Yeah.
reason that you would want to privatize something that makes sense, the reason that someone might say they want to do it, it's because it's going to be better or whatever, but we know that that's not true. And we know the actual reason for this and almost everything going on is so that folks get more power and get
Hmm.
more wealth, essentially. That's what's
But
happening.
it's equally as evil whether that was their purpose or there's other people that are
For
like,
sure.
Trump wants this and we're going to enact it. Excuse me, forgot to grab my water. But we're not going to think all the way down about how it's going to affect people, because if you, and we're using the VA as an example, but like if you stop hiring, or you're not funding, or you're not, the administration isn't doing the paperwork, the bureaucracy that needs to be done, people are going to lose out. And veterans are already losing out with the VA. It's
Yeah,
already a
no
problem.
doubt.
It needs to be fixed, not privatized, not,
Yeah,
let it fall apart and crumble over the next 6 months to a year and then be like, oh, we have to privatize it
we'll
because it's
have to come in
broken.
and save it. Yeah,
And then all the people that have suffered all that time, I mean, real people who
yeah,
served our country. It's mind blowing. It's just mind blowing. And the same thing with immigration, and like there's every single thing that he has put out there has the potential, no matter if there is a slight good to it. We do have a problem with immigration. We do have things we need to fix. There are solutions that we need to find, but the people that are going to be hurt by it over the time that he just bulldozes through things, they're real people. And some of them are Americans. So, if you're out there
yeah.
thinking, well, I don't care, they're not Americans, some of them are.
Which is an immoral like place to be anyway. But
Yeah.
and like this the whole hypocrisy of it all is just exhausting. Like it's absolutely exhausting about how you can focus like try to erode services like the VA on one hand, and on the other hand, talk about how pro-military you are,
Oh, yeah.
um,
Yeah.
is outrageous. And I don't know how a person who holds those two things
Yeah.
like sleeps at night. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how
Yeah,
you
and it's the same
rationalize that.
thing. The same thing with like the back the blue attitude of the right, but yet
Exactly.
they pardon 1,500 people,
And
and
they're fine with it.
many of them, including Jeremy Rogers here in Midland,
Hmm.
you know, actually assaulted police officers.
Exactly.
He hit a police officer with a flagpole. And many of those police officers, like the one, I mean, I'd heard Michael Fanone. I mean, I'd heard him speak. I know who he is, but I don't know if I knew all of his injuries. He had a concussion, traumatic brain injury. He was dragged down the steps. He was
Jeez.
hit with pipes and flagpoles, tased in the back of the neck. He had a heart attack. I mean, he can't even be a cop anymore because of all that happened to him.
Yeah. Let
But
alone
the people that did
the
that
mental
are now
trauma,
pardoned.
let alone like the mental trauma
Yeah.
of going through that. I'm sure
Hmm.
he thought he was going to die. Like
Yeah.
I'm like by
He
at the
probably thought he
hands of
did
this
die because he
mob.
passed out. You know, he probably thought he did
Exactly.
die.
Oh my God.
Oh, so anyway,
So we
back
started
to
talking
helping
about
people
chilling
deal with
out.
it.
We started talking about chilling out, and
And
then
then we
we
get all
got
worked up.
ourselves all worked up, which I guess is a good example of like the. Also, one thing that I think is really important is having good friends, right? Who like
Hmm.
you can have these conversations with. I'm just thinking about like what are your boundaries and how do you protect yourself and how do we make sure that we're like conserving our resources, right, as
Hmm.
a movement and deploying our resources in the ways that are
Yeah.
going to make the biggest impact.
And like
So
another thing I've had as a leader in our community, I've had a lot of people like, what are we going to do about the deportations? What are we going to do about the trans bans? What are we going to do about? Well, I'm going to be honest. I am a local leader. I don't know. I
yeah.
don't have that answer because one, just because he's put out an EO, nothing has happened yet. So
Hmm.
we don't, like you had said, we don't know what the repercussions are fully.
Yeah.
So while we can start planning and thinking and gearing up as organizations and as leaders and as people that want to help, we don't really have a concrete action that we can take at the moment. So just give us time. We will for sure be watching all of this, and also maybe turn to organizations who specifically deal with a
Hmm.
specific issue.
Yeah.
The Midland County Democratic Party, the Women of Michigan Action Network, those are the two we hype all the time because those are the two that we're organized or we're part of. Um, they can't actually do everything,
Yeah.
you know, and so there's going to be organizations out there. Moms Demand Action. They're going to handle gun action, action on gun safety. There's reproductive organizations. There's immigration
Yep.
organizations.
Great
So
Lakes Bay
look to those.
Pride. Yep. All of those.
Yep.
Yeah. And the best thing that we can do, right, is just start, it's to continue our efforts around collaborating with those
Hmm.
groups.
Yeah.
And know that people are in different places, right? So like
Yeah.
um sort of like trusting that, if someone is not out in front and maybe they used to be, right? That's okay. Like they're just
Yeah.
protecting like their peace and that doesn't mean that they're less committed or they're less
Hmm.
willing. Um, so I have a quote. I have a quote to share, and then maybe we can finish up
Okay.
about this whole question of anger. And it's so wild because my friend and I were texting this morning about anger. Essentially, we have lots of philosophical conversations, and actually yesterday, and then this morning, she sent me this quotes from Gandhi, which kind of I think relates. So the quote is, I have learned through bitter experience the one supreme lesson, to conserve my anger, and as heat conserved is transmitted to energy, even our anger control can be transmuted into a power which can move the world. So just like thinking about this anger as like I don't have to express it every time I feel
Hmm.
it, but it's like this anger as like heat that I'm going to have,
Yeah.
right? And continue to grow within me so that it gets larger and larger. That is a resource, this like passion that's growing, that is a resource that if we're smart, we can
Hmm.
deploy it in the best possible
Yeah.
ways.
We can fill our battery.
Yes. Also known as chill the fuck out.
Okay, so I have a question for you because this might help other people as
Yeah.
well. Um, and I'll tell you mine after you tell me yours. What are some things that you're doing right now? Activities, things that help you chill the fuck out that don't
Yeah.
necessarily have anything to do with politics.
Yeah. Well, one thing I'm not doing is reading headlines before I go to bed. Like the other day, I was like,
Craig
I
literally,
usually,
literally yelled at me last night for doing that.
ah, It's terrible. Like the other day I usually read before I go to bed. Right now I'm like between books. I'm looking for a book to
Mhm.
read, but I gotta read before I go to bed. So like started like in this, social media, and then I jumped to another space, and then suddenly I found myself like I think on the CNN website. I didn't even mean to go there, and I'm flipping through headlines and just getting like worked up. I'm literally in bed. It's 11:30, and I'm allowing myself to get worked up over these headlines I cannot do anything about
Yeah.
sitting there. So like
Yeah.
one thing I'll offer, don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Um, and as you know, like one thing that I've discovered in the last year is watercolor painting, which is a
Hmm.
wild thing, but it's a very centering experience to me, and it's a great reminder that that you actually don't have full control even if you want to, right?
Yeah.
Because in watercolor, there's a lot of like letting go and letting it happen.
Hmm.
And so I paint every morning. Every morning I get up and I have my coffee and I go tape my little piece of paper down on my table and I start a painting or I finish a painting from the day before. And so they're not great. They're not great. They're not, I mean,
Yeah,
there's
they
not.
are too. Everybody that's listening, they're fabulous. They're really good.
But they're just I keep stacking them up. That's something that I've found. And it's like just for me. That's just for me.
Yeah.
And that's been nice. So
Yeah.
those are two things.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Jennifer? What are you doing these days?
So like you, I read a lot. So that's always what I do. But I have been cross stitching, and I
Oh
know you
yeah.
know this too because I've showed it to you. But I used to cross stitch when my oldest kid is 29. So 30 years ago, I used to do this, and I would make them little blankets and onesies and bibs and stuff. And then it fell off because I've got 5 kids, so
Mm.
life. But yeah, I took it up, I think after Thanksgiving, maybe. I can't remember exactly when I started, but I chose like a big one. I'm like, this thing's gonna go on the wall. And my husband looked at it and he's like, you're never gonna finish that. I'm like, yes, I am. That's the point.
That's the
I don't
point.
want
Yeah.
something that I can get done really, really quickly. I want to work on this thing for months. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe halfway done.
Mm.
Maybe not quite that much, but I love it. It's so calming.
That's
And I
so
actually
awesome.
we went to Riley's swim meet last night, and we were coming home. We got home at 9. I'm like, I have not touched my cross stitch all day. I need to go sit down and do this.
Yeah, that's so awesome. There's something about like an activity like that requires just enough brain like
Yeah.
concentration that in order to do this activity, you can't let anything else in, right? But it's
Hmm.
not so much that it's exhausting. Like
Yeah.
those things, watercolor painting, cross stitching. For me, in the non-winter months, kayaking is that. Like I have to
Yeah.
pay enough attention to kayaking, but not so much that it's exhausting. That it's just like is very freeing. So
Yeah.
finding those types of activities where, and especially if it's about being outside or creating something beautiful or whatever, um, are really like worthwhile, I think,
Yeah.
especially these
For sure.
days. So yeah, thanks for that question.
Yeah.
Alrighty, well, we'll wrap it up on this Friday. It was good to talk to you, Jennifer.
You too.
And remember, folks, chill the fuck out. It's okay. It's okay. We'll do the work we need to do.
All right.
All
Talk
right.
to everybody
Take
later.
care. Bye bye.
Bye.